Welcome to the Tradier Rundown. I am Jim Urio. With me is Bob Iacchino. We are the hosts of the Tradier Trader's Edge. Bobby is still upset that each time we do the intro, my picture is above his. I think that's fair. Please write in and tell me what you guys think. Bobby, how are you?
Still upset.
Good.
Still upset. Very upset.
Let's get right to it then. 2023 was an interesting year for commodities. Some suffered, some did well. Gold up 13%, silver up nothing, platinum down. Crude pummeled. What's the theme that we're leaving behind in 2023? And what's the theme that we're, not that this is a tall ask or anything, what's going to be the theme in 2024?
No, I mean, it's going to be Fed, right?
Yeah.
Did they actually pivot like we all believe they did based on the SEP, the summary of economic projections, which we all know as the dot plots? Did they actually pivot? Okay. Did gold react correctly? And did, quite frankly, the stock market react correctly? You know, gold shot up and made a new all-time high, but pulled back in toward the close and it started 2024. I mean, the close of the year and started 2024 weak. I believe gold is still going to shine in 2024.
Well, cute. Who pays you for that bullshit?
Yeah,
gold is going to shine. You belong on Main
Glimmer.
Street now.
It's going to glisten and glimmer and sparkle.
I would like to wash my hands of that comment, people. Okay, let's break it down to some individual ones. Copper held up pretty well. Copper did well despite the fact that every news bit we get out of China is disappointing, including this past weekend. Contraction in manufacturing index, lower than expected home sales. Copper still chugs along. What's the deal there?
Well, I think you're right about that. I mean, the fact that copper gained about 2%, depending on which contract you're looking at, a little bit more than 2%, is shocking to me given how weak China was and with the backdrop of them doing more stimulus, and it didn't seem to work. So something you said on one of our other shows that I've thought about and now agree with is that China may be the surprise in 2024 with their recovery, especially when you look at how far behind they were at the post-COVID recovery, and that could actually spring copper for the year.
So it's interesting, and I'm still quite long copper, and I don't want to fall into the trap of just trying to justify my position with my fundamental analysis. But that being said, I think the notion of electrification here, the green movement, is going to keep copper prices pretty well supported. The second that China comes back into the picture as a positive standpoint, I believe we could see a significant move higher. And again, we had on our Future Edge podcast yesterday, our technical analyst, and the 404 level in copper futures, a settlement above there. And I think that will signify that the market is ready to start pricing a positive China in. You want to move on to crude?
Yeah, let's move on to it.
So you tell me, you're the crude guy. Do you have any catchy things like the crude is going to be dark and murky, or is that just for gold?
I think the crude oil markets will be slick and slippery going into 2024, I think. By the way, really interesting on your comment about electrification, because palladium, which is much used in catalytic converters, actually plunged 38.3%. And the interesting thing about palladium is it is constantly in deficit. There's never been a surplus of palladium since it started being used and things like that. But back to the slick and slippery and dark nature of crude oil. It looks to me economically like we might be going into sort of a reflation situation for markets. And what that means is outsized growth and outsized inflation. Okay, because if we go into outside growth with inflation where it is, I suspect inflation won't get down below 2%. And if that's the case, historically, energy leads in a type of market based off of a reflationary scenario. So while crude oil is definitely weak now, I think the future for crude oil, maybe going into the third quarter of next year, or of this year, I should say, 2024, could surprise some people to the upside.
I think that's interesting. Do you have any call on some of the soft food commodities? Because I always think part of the equation is supposed to be low interest rates support them. Higher interest rates made them go lower because storage costs obviously go up with higher interest rates. What happens, what I think is going to happen, is that interest rates are going to come down significantly. That should support all commodities, correct?
Yeah, I think cattle's the only one that I have an opinion on. And I think the futures price rose about 21% last year. I think that may continue simply because there's pressure on cattle as sort of an asset from factors outside of the financial world that want less cattle to be there. And personally, consumers of cattle, I think, are starting to increase rather than decrease. So that's the one I think you could see continued gains in 2024.
No question about it. You tell me I can't eat meat, I'm going to want to eat more meat. And the
Yeah.
headlines that come out are repeated. The one in Ireland where they were going to just randomly kill 200,000 head or something ridiculous like that. So someone's going to come back and say, you reported misinformation, it was 190,000 head. When they're doing that to save the environment, well,
Right.
they got to understand that disruptions happen.
And
Anyway.
you start doing that in the U.S., that makes people do exactly what you just said. It makes them want it more.
Yeah, I want a big juicy burger every time they talk about it. Thank you guys for joining us on Tradier Rundown. Again, tune into our show, Tradier's The Trader's Edge, which is live right after we record this. It's live at 2 o'clock Central time on Wednesdays, but switching to 3 o'clock Central time next week.